Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins, and today I'm joined by Joeri Billast. Joeri, you're very welcome to the podcast. Let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself, tell us all about everything you're involved in, and a little bit about your career journey. So over to you, Joeri.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks for having me. Happy to be on your show. Yeah, actually, let's talk a bit about how it all started for me in entrepreneurship. I had the first business, and then, it's already some time ago, It was in 2006, I started my first business into business analytics, and I sold that business in 2013. So at that moment, I was not into marketing. I had an IT company which built solutions to make better decision-making for bigger companies. And then at that time, like sometimes in life, you ask yourself the question, do I still like to do this? Do I need to do anything else? So I made the exercise for myself, and I decided I need to do something else. At the same time in my life, I was also separating from the mother of my children, also at the same time. So I needed to make some decisions, and everything changed at that time in my life. You have like these things you are sure of that they are there every day, and suddenly it was like a white paper to start again. Then I started a new business, so it was hard in the beginning, find out, what to do, how should I work with new clients. But, through that experience, I would say, I had other people following me on social media and asking me questions. Joeri, what are you doing? Building up new company? Tell me all about this. And can you also help me with that? So then I went into social media marketing. Also, giving presentation about it, talking about it, about social media marketing. And then at a certain moment, time passes by and I was like, okay, it was at Social Media World actually 1 year ago. And by the way, Simon, tomorrow I'm going back to San Diego for Social Media Marketing World. So at the time, at the event, I met Michael Stelzner, who is the organizer of the event. I met Mark Schaefer, who is a well-known, marketing expert around the world, has written a lot of books. I met a lot of people. I did a lot of networking, but actually those two persons made an impact on the rest of my life, on the 12 months that were going to follow. Because, Michael Stelzner gave an NFT to everyone, so a digital collectible, if you want. So and it made me enter the Web3 world. Like Mark Schaefer too, I met him, I helped him, to start up his Discord. I took some initiatives in Mark Schaefer's Rise community, and I started to organize events in the metaverse, in a digital world. So just by taking these initiatives and building content at the same time, Simon, so like you are doing with the podcast, I started to do my podcast, or to make my first episode. It was in January 2022. I started a podcast, episode by episode, learning, getting better at it, finding guests, how it is. And then at the same time, I met Mark Schaefer and I met Michael Stelzner. I said, okay, let's now focus on Web3 marketing guests. So I found my niche. I started to make content about Web3 instead of broader digital marketing subjects, which made me, being recognized as someone in Web3. Then I went also to a few events around Web3, interviewed guests, did a lot of networking. And all those things, Simon, come together now, because now, I have my podcast, of course, but I have my blog. I have now people asking me to come on podcasts. I have like people organizing me to do events, asking advice around Web3. And now it's for me the challenge, to find new clients in Web3 and also get my new mastermind off the ground, actually, around Web3 marketing. And those are the things I'm most occupied with at this moment.
Thank you, Joeri. That's a great quick tour through the life and the work that you're involved in. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us today here on the episode. And obviously you're no stranger to the world of podcasts. What is it about podcasting that you like, Joeri? Why does that work for you?
Well, sometimes people say to me that my superpower is networking, is connecting with people. I go to an event. I like it when there's no one that I know. I just talk to everyone. And for me, podcasting is a way to connect with people and to have a conversation like we are doing right now. It's different than just being connected on LinkedIn, for instance. So you get to talk to people that perhaps otherwise you would not directly talk to, and have a more deeper connection because you are having a one-to-one conversation. And my podcast motivated me, helped me to learn, but like I said, to connect with people in the Web3 space that are connectors, that are like authorities in there. And also I like it because everyone, if you build your personal brand, you need to find a way to get your content out there and get people to know you. And for me, podcasting, it's for me the easiest way to make content. I'm better at speaking than at writing or at making videos, at making images. So for me, speaking is the easiest way. So I even get energy from that. So that's again why I am in podcasting.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And obviously you focus heavily not just on Web3, but you also tap into, don't you, the CMO opinions when it comes to Web3 and the future, I suppose, of marketing and where that intersection meets. So you mentioned Mark Schaefer as well as somebody that you met at the conference, and Mark's been a guest on this show. I'm not sure that episode's been released at the time of us recording this. But Mark is writing extensively at the moment. His latest book is all about community, which speaks to what you're talking about in terms of networking and this medium sort of helping people to find and discover new people, new ideas, new ways of thinking. The question I want to ask you though, Joeri, is in the world of Web3, it's been going through a bit of turmoil lately, hasn't it? So we've seen cryptos and NFTs and huge changes in that, and that continues. And then we have blockchain and the implications of that for businesses. And I read a fascinating article recently in Ad Age, the magazine, which is read by a lot of marketers around the world, discussing how Nike and Starbucks are working with their virtual assets. We would term them as NFTs, but they look at them as virtual sort of creations and collectibles, and how that's really working for their part of their community and their strategy. So where do you think we're at when it comes to Web3? What's going to happen, and what are you looking at over the next sort of 6 to 12 months in this world? What's your viewpoint? Because you're talking to a lot of people in the space.
Indeed, that's also one of the questions that I ask those people, and it's nice that you ask the question to me too, because for me, actually, Web3 it's a nice name, but you are not there yet. So it's more like Web 2.5 or 2.5, if you want, that we are today. But there are initiatives going on, and you need to make a difference between, of course, the financial markets, the stories around crypto that you are hearing, and blockchain, and all of the possibilities, all of the things that you can do with blockchain, with this technology, because blockchain won't go away. That's something that's for sure now. But of course, people are looking at what is happening, in the crypto markets, because if you are not in Web3, this is what you are hearing in the news most of the time. And when it comes to really Web3 solutions or applications, I think the best way for businesses is, you mentioned it already, is not to use the word NFT or use the word metaverse, but just use the word digital collectible or digital access. Or if you do an event in the metaverse, then call it like a digital event or a digital world event. So there are a lot of initiatives going on. I feel that, sometimes it's a problem to get budget because of the economical conditions, the financial conditions, everything that's happening in the world. But when talking to people, I see that there, in the background, I would say that there are lots of things going on. And for instance, in the fashion industry, some of my guests on my podcast came from there. I see a lot of things going on. Just look at, if you have children, just look at your children. What are they doing every day? they are, on this online games. They are in these virtual worlds. They are buying skins for their avatars. It's already happening. And this generation, now they are at school, but they will start, to work at some time. And then you will see that I think this evolution is unstoppable. So then the next 6 to 12 months, I would say, we will see some nice projects. We will see perhaps some bad news, but also some positive news. There is a lot of news in the market. We will see what is the news that is, being presented. But I think that big brands, they will start to use more and more technologies like NFTs, but perhaps not naming it like that. We will see also businesses like Apple, come with products like Apple with their VR glasses. Some other products will become better. We will have, better possibilities with metaverses, with, visualizations. So there is a lot of, I would say, development going on, because 6 or 12 months in the Web3 world, a lot can happen. It's not like in the real world, I would say. The evolutions are really, really following up each other.
I think what you've said is extremely insightful, Joeri, because the big brands today, yes, they're focused on you and I and how we spend our money. Of course they are. But they have rooms and departments and teams working on the next generation coming through and how they will touch, experience, and purchase products and services from that brand. And you made a great parallel between the world of gaming, for example. And I think gaming is where it's at, because you mentioned people buying skins or dances or moves or characters or weaponry or, additional points or coins or whatever that is. But there's a huge generation coming through that are very used to creating a world within a digital environment. That's not new. They've been doing it for years. And I think the gaming industry can, to some degree, point the way there quite a bit. But the next generation coming through, I think, are even more in tune with that, in inverted commas, Web3 universe than, say, even you and I are, and even the experts of today are, because to them, they've known nothing else. Whereas to us, we've known life before and life after web, whether we're at 2.5 or 3.0, or we move to 4.0, or whatever that looks like. And I think the other insightful thing is exactly building on the point we were talking about earlier, which is the naming of it. Things like when you say NFT and metaverse, it automatically shuts a certain proportion of the community off. They don't want to talk about it. They've seen it come and go. Whereas when you start to reposition it, and big brands are experts at repositioning things, the fundamental underlying technology and the importance of the engagement that brings to a brand, I don't think is going anywhere. If anything, I think it's going to speed up. Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, I think it will speed up, perhaps not always at the same speed, because there will be hurdles, but we will see these breakthroughs. I think if something really, really important happens, if a big company makes a big move, the other ones will probably follow. If Microsoft does something, Google and Apple will look at it, or another big brand, they will follow each other. And sometimes that makes, evolution go faster.
Yeah, and we've still to see things like AR and VR, and you mentioned Apple, for example, because the rumors are very high at the time of recording again. But we yet to see some of this coming through into tangible end user products that we can purchase, buy, and use. But it is tantalizingly close, and it feels like it's going to change quite rapidly in lots of different areas, and we're going to see a lot more of this technology becoming consumer type products and services.
Right.
Yeah. The question I've got for you next, Joeri, because I do want to ask you a couple of other areas. I want to ask you a few other areas, but before we get off this technology sort of discussion, we have to talk about artificial intelligence. We have to talk about things like ChatGPT and Midjourney and all the good tools. There are thousands of them out there, but you must be having conversations about this all the time at this stage, because as AI meets this part of this Web 3 discussion, it's having profound impact on people's availability of knowledge, the outputs they can create. And it is changing things from a creator economy, isn't it?
It gives a lot of potential. By the way, one of my guests some episodes ago was Babak Wajad, who was in AI, who is really a big name in AI, and who worked on the Siri language actually from Apple. It was before that ChatGPT came out and so on. So yeah, ChatGPT, Jasper, Midjourney, companies like that. There are many others. This technology can really be interesting for marketers, for entrepreneurs. For instance, I'm using it every day. You have a podcast, I have a podcast. I have a blog linked to my podcast. In the beginning, I'd really, a content writer listen to my podcast episode and make an article out of that. Now I'm using ChatGPT and Jasper to create content out of the audio version of my podcast. So I make a transcript based on the conversation, and the transcript I use to upload in ChatGPT and to make an article based on that. Not only an article, also chapter markers, notable quotes, resources mentioned. So 95% of the work is done if you use ChatGPT for that. You can use ChatGPT also or other AIs in every situation, actually, because not to replace you, but to give you inspiration and to add value. So what I do is I'm not asking a question and then using this as content for my blog. No, I feed it with my content and then ask them to just rewrite this. And the extra advantage is because I write content in English, my native language, it's not English, it's Dutch and then French. And so for me, it helps me also, to make better sentences, to make, it sound really fluently. So that's also an advantage of using a ChatGPT and so on. But not only for me, I see it all around me, people using AI in everything, in every product we will see this. You see these integrations coming all the time. ChatGPT, lots of the time, it's not available. You see, if you don't pay for it, because people are so much using it or trying to use it. But I see an evolution also. Like everyone can, use Facebook or write a blog or paint a wall, but it will not be the same result every time. It depends on your skills. So this will also be a skill that will be important to be able to write good prompts to get the value out of that. You mentioned Midjourney. That's the same thing. You need to have the right, write the right prompts to Midjourney to have a good results. And then, be a bit, don't give up at first, but you probably need to spend 30 minutes to get something that you really, really like. So I don't know.
Yeah, and prompt engineering is a career now. I mean, there are people that are upskilling on a daily basis, how their expertise in this world of how to write the appropriate prompt to get the best output possible. And it's not easy. And so, I've mentioned it on the show before, but somebody said to me, I can't quite remember who it was, but that we were talking about this topic. They said it's somewhere between a coder and a language professional, and somebody that can actually write that prompt in such a, I suppose in the software terms, you'd refer to writing elegant code. And it's somebody that can actually write the prompts in a way that actually gets the best out of the technology. And I think there are some people that are really leading in this field and showing people the true capabilities of this technology. But again, somewhat exciting and somewhat scary. We only seem to be at the very beginning of that journey, Joeri.
Indeed, it's in the beginning because businesses are already using it, but now people start to see what is possible, and people see this from others. So we are now with the early adopters, because I also have given courses to people to explain how you can use it, what it is, how you can use it, and they are looking at me like, wow, is this even possible? That it's so. Yeah, got so much power. Of course, we will need to be careful because if we start to use AI to feed the internet, the AI will be fed by the AI at the end, because we'll go looking for content that is done by the AI. So there is a lot of evolution that we will see. Also, Google doesn't like it, of course, because Google was like, the master. Everyone went to Google. Now, if you you have a question, you just ask it to ChatGPT instead of Google. So and also writing content is easy. So Google will have like these AI detectors that they will flag content as being AI generated. So yes, we are at the beginning. Lots of stuff will be coming our way, and we cannot ignore it. We just need to, acknowledge that we need to live with it and use it, for the better, for just making our lives better. I think I read it somewhere today on social media that we can still make the difference, humans, by being human, by acting as a human and not as an AI. So because so AI can help us, but it should not replace us.
I think that's a good health warning, Joeri. And it's funny. I was watching, I think it was Bloomberg Technology, and it was today or yesterday, but they were talking about almost this code red within Google about, for all their core leading products that have multiple millions and millions of users, how fast can they get AI integrated into that? Because otherwise they're going to miss the wave. And that seems to be a huge strategy. And then on the other side of that argument, I refer to the statement that with great power comes great responsibility. And at the moment, we're still figuring this stuff out, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah, we're figuring it out. We just don't. It's like when the internet came, all the possibilities, when social media came, when mobile phones came, technology can always be used, from different sides. So, but we need to be careful. Also, we talked about Web3, about crypto and so on. It really has a lot of advantages, but a lot also of dangers. So yeah, so you should be aware of that in this world, that there are always two sides.
I totally agree. Now, look, I want to change gears a little bit and I want to squeeze in a few other questions. I want to ask you about your own learning style. Are you a book reader? Are you listening to podcasts? Do you watch YouTube? Is it all of the above? Are you just turning it all off and putting Netflix on at the end of the day because you've had enough of all this technology? How does the learning style work for you, and what kind of things are you attracted to?
For me, what works the best is meeting people, talking to people, hearing stories, having discussions, having a dialogue with people. That is what works the best for me. That's how, I just by doing my podcast, but also having conversations outside of my podcast with people who have a vision, who have experiences, listening to them, asking questions, discussing with them. That's my favorite one. Also, I like to listen to podcasts or listen to material. But for instance, we mentioned Mark Schaefer. So what helped for me to really remember and really have it in my mind all the time, because he has written a great book. He has written different great books, but I known this book. And what I did was I listened to it on the plane, and then I came back at home, and then I bought the physical book, and then I started to make annotations in the book, because I knew when listening, oh, this was interesting, and this made me really remember stuff, and I can still have a look at the book and read the annotations again. So that's a way how I really remember it, because I'm more like, my memory is not like, was at school. It's not like I read something and I remember it. I need to do other stuff to remember stuff. And for me, it's talking, listening, hearing stuff. And of course, there are the other stuff is like following influencers on social media that are, in my case, in Web3, participating in Twitter spaces, participating in communities, answering questions, asking questions. I'm also myself in a mastermind. I mentioned I've started my own, but I'm also in other masterminds where I'm listening to other people and I'm interacting. So for me, for my personality, this is what helps the best for me.
Thanks for sharing that, Joeri. And I suppose leading on from that, there must be people that inspire you. We've mentioned a couple of people already, but when you look at your life, it can be outside of business or just in life in general, but there must be people that have inspired you, that you admire, that have helped you along the way. Or is it a particular type of person, a personality or character trait? When I ask you that question, what springs to mind, or who springs to mind?
Yeah, there have been a couple of people, of course, that I've met or I've written, I have read their books. Also, my personality is I don't want to follow the crowd. I want to do things differently. So that's not always easy if you are like that, but it's interesting, if you make your own path and not follow not follow the path that is already there. So there were, of course, some known authors or coaches that each got, I would say, gave me some inspiration or helped me out. But if let's go just a few years back, or let's go the start of my first business at that moment. So I was starting a new business from zero, my business analytics company. And then at that moment, I had lost my mother, and my father was, he had stopped working. And I said to him, you know what? Help me with the business, do some administration, give me some advice, and then I help you to publish your book. So he helped me out. So at the time, I had an advisor in the company. I was starting. I was at the end of my 30s, and in the beginning of my 30s. I was in the end of my 20s when I started it, but then at the end of my 30s, I sold it. So I was with my father. He helped me at that moment. But then at a certain moment, when I sold the first company, I started a new one. He gave me a book from an English coach, Fiona Harold, and I read the book, and the book was already, written in the beginning of 2000. And I read it. This is really an interesting book. What this lady says. We are now, so many years later, and I still find her advice interesting. At that moment, I read also the books from Brendon Burchard. I was, trying to see, okay, a coach can really help me, because at that moment, just before, I never had like coaches helping me out. And then at a certain moment, I met Fiona. She helped me to publish my first book. But then the book in that beginning was not really doing well in Belgium. Actually, it's often that you are outside of your country that people, give you more attention, or you're better viewed, or they really like what you're doing outside of your country than inside of your country. So in Belgium, the book was not really, taking off. I took the book with me to social media world last year. I showed it to people in the US. And I thought, wow, what an amazing book. And I said, okay, let's put it on Amazon. And let's put it, and of course, I not only on Amazon, I looked for a launch team. So I talked to people there. This guy from self-publishing school, he helped me. I put it out, and then it became a bestseller on Amazon just by talking to the right people.
And this is the 5K challenge, right?
Yeah, that's my book. Yeah. So, as I said, I love to talk. Writing is a little bit more difficult for me, so it also took some time. But Fiona helped me to write it, but then other people I met helped me to publish it. And now then I met Mark Schaefer to help me to get my word out there. Actually, it's a funny story, because I was already thinking about Web3 when my book became a bestseller, but I was already thinking, social media marketing, I'm still, doing that for Web3 companies, but it's not my main focus anymore. So while I was building or rebuilding my personal brand into Web3, the social media marketing book was doing well. So that's a funny story. But yeah, reading other people that have inspired me is Joe Polizzi, for instance, whom I met on another conference. Then he came to Brussels not so long ago. I said, Joe, I need to meet you. We meet up. He came on my podcast. I will go to his conference too. So many different people that have in some way gave me some inspiration. So I take from different books, different pieces, and I put them together. It's not like there is one Bible or something. Perhaps one Bible, if I may say so, it's Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. That's one of the books that, if you want, call it Bible or something, that's what I look at. And then the other one from Brendon Burchard, High Performing Habits, I think it's called. That's also a good one to get the most out of your day.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that information and that insight. And I know your book's still available on Amazon if people want to check that out. What about particular advice, something that you've kept close to heart that's seen you through life, something that you think has been so important that you hold on to it? Or is there some advice that you often find yourself sharing with others because you think it's a fundamental piece of advice?
What I often say to others, because people are always, because I had also this, you have lots of ideas, but you don't implement, or you don't implement because you think of what will people say, what will happen. Sometimes it's just the best to say, just go for it, just take the risk and think of yourself, what is the worst case? What is the worst that can happen? So for instance, when I started my first business, there was, I just said to everyone, I will start a business, but I had no experience whatsoever in the entrepreneurial world. I was just taking a jump, taking a leap and taking a risk. But I said, what is the worst thing that can happen? Okay, I need to find a job again. And, people, but is this really, is this something that's bad, that's really bad? No, it's not, I'm still healthy. It's not relevant. So I just said, let's go for it. The worst thing that can happen is this. And most of the time it doesn't happen. You just focus on the positive things that will come. Another one is with that is, also I'm implementing. So I have ideas, just do this. For instance, when I started my podcast, in the beginning, I could say, okay, it's not my native language. Who is waiting for Joeri from Belgium? Why would they listen to me? It's like, you say, why? As you just said, you know what? I'm just starting the podcast. I just starting to have conversations with people and I see where we go from there without any expectations. And I was building and building and building, and then you get better by doing it. So those are a few advice. I would say there's so many things. It's just for me also, I'm like positive guy. I try to see the positive side on everything. There is always something positive. So I try to, if there is something bad that happens to me, I always try to find what is now the good thing I can get out of this and, make me feel better. And also, again, linked to what I said was, what if too much thinking about what can go wrong, I say to myself, and there's an opportunity, instead of no or yes, but I have to, yes. A lot of people say yes, but I say yes, and okay, you can do. Do you want to do this? Yes, and you will do. If you say yes, and it's more positive than say yes, but.
I like that a lot. That's very good, Joeri. Thanks for sharing that advice and some of your thoughts on that aspect. And I suppose a couple of other things I want to ask you and just squeeze them in before we run out of time here today. One is, obviously, you've the book, you've the podcast, you're jetting off now to a huge event. You're speaking, you're in this cutting edge area of technology. But when you look at your own sort of plan, the roadmap that you've got for the next 6, 9, 12 months, what are you hoping to achieve? What are you looking to expand on, grow in? Is there anything new on the horizon? How does that work for you?
So yes, you said it. I did a lot of speaking gigs or speaking. I did a lot of public speaking in the past, but always about social media marketing. But at the past, at some point in time, I also changed the subject of my speaking. Now I'm doing the same thing. I want to speak around Web3, but my horizon is larger, not only in Belgium or let's say in the countries near Belgium, but around the world. So that's my big goal is, I have already guests from everywhere around the world, but also be speaking in other places around the world. Now it starts to come. People start to ask me. People start to give it opportunities. I will host the Web3 table talks at Social Media Marketing World. I was also asked to be in a panel during ETH Denver, but that I couldn't make it because it's always, of course, lots of traveling and you need to make it fit with the calendar. And next to this speaking, which I really like, is, to really grow this mastermind that I have, because I like to inspire people. I like to build communities. I like to network. I like to bring people together from everywhere around the world and grow together. And that's something that I can do with my mastermind. So for me, for the next months, is really focused on doing that. And perhaps something exciting that I can to share with you too, Simon, is that with the RISE community, so Mark Schaefer's RISE community, we will be publishing a book together with about 30 marketers, and I'm one of them. And my chapter obviously is about Web3. And this book is called The Most Amazing Marketing Book Ever, and it will be published at the end of May.
That is exciting news. I look forward to that one a lot. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I know you've got to jet off to Social Media Marketing World, which is a huge event in its own right. So I suppose the last thing I want to ask you before you jump on a plane is, Is there anything else that I haven't mentioned that you want to share with our worldwide audience today? And also, and importantly, if people want to connect with you about all the areas that we've discussed today, where's the best place to send people to, Joeri?
Yeah, obviously I have a lot of content, and yeah, I would just like invite people to listen to my podcast. And it's always nice for me to get some feedback. What you think about this? Did a certain episode really make you think? Do you have advice for me, or do you think of other podcast guests? So my podcast is www.cmo-stories.com. But if you look for CMO Stories on the podcast apps, you will certainly find it. I also have my blog, which has all the show notes, which is web3.net. And that's funny because Web3 is Dutch for Web3. It's written webdrie.net, of course. And next to those two websites, I would love to connect with you on social media. You can find me everywhere, but the places I'm most active on is on LinkedIn and Twitter. There's only one guy with my name, Joeri Billast. I can put it in the show notes, so it will be easy to find me. And thanks again for having me, Simon.
Well, look, that's no problem. It's been great to spend some time with you today before you jet off. Thanks very much indeed to Joeri Billast for being a guest here on the Global Discussion today. Thank you to all the audience around the world for either watching or listening to this show, to this episode of the podcast. Please make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do all the things that I need you to do to help to support this podcast. And I hope you'll meet me back here for some more discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. So thank you, Joeri. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks, Simon.